Right when your life feels like it's falling apart, the calmest person in the room is usually the one you've stopped paying attention to. This isn't a metaphor from a Sunday school lesson. The Sea of Galilee sits roughly 680 feet below sea level, boxed in by hills that rise nearly 2,000 feet on the eastern side. When cold air drops off those hills into the warm air sitting over the lake, calm water can turn into 10-foot waves in under 30 minutes. In 1992, a storm exactly like that sent 10-foot waves crashing into the town of Tiberias and did real, documented damage. That's not an exaggeration for a sermon. That's the actual lake Jesus was sleeping on. You know what it's like when the thing you were afraid of stops being hypothetical and starts actually happening. You've had the night where the diagnosis, the layoff, or the phone call landed all at once, and it genuinely felt like the boat was going under. You've prayed in that exact moment, out loud or silently, and felt like the sky stayed completely, deliberately silent. Everything in the next 6 minutes comes from Mark chapter 4, an eyewitness account, written down by people who fished this exact lake for a living and knew exactly how dangerous it actually was. This isn't a parable this time. It's an actual night, an actual storm, an actual boat taking on actual water, with Jesus in it. Bold claim to open this one. The storm didn't happen because the disciples wandered off course. It happened while they were doing exactly what Jesus told them to do. Mark 4:35 says it plainly. Jesus says to them, "Let us go over to the other side." That's the whole instruction. They get in the boat and go, obeying the exact word Jesus gave them. And the storm hits anyway. While they're obeying. Not while they're wandering. There's a version of faith that assumes obedience is supposed to come with a weather guarantee. If you're doing what God told you, the crossing should be smooth. Mark 4 contradicts that in the first sentence. These men were exactly where they were supposed to be, and the sea still tried to kill them. This shows up constantly in how people talk themselves out of things that were actually going fine. Someone starts a business they felt clearly called to start, hits the brutal first-year cash flow crunch every single business hits, and reads that crunch as a sign from God to quit, when it might just be the actual weather of that particular crossing. Someone commits to a marriage that was genuinely healthy going in, hits the completely normal hard season most marriages hit somewhere in year 3 or 4, and starts wondering if they married the wrong person, instead of recognizing they're in ordinary weather for this particular sea. Notice the timeline again. Instruction, obedience, storm. Not instruction, wrong turn, storm. The storm arrives inside the obedience, not as a correction of it. Jesus doesn't say, "Let's start the crossing and see how it goes." He says, "Let us go over to the other side," a destination stated with certainty before the storm has any say to "here's your practical move." Write down the one thing you're fairly confident you were told to do, the job, the move, the relationship, the hard conversation. That's gotten harder, not easier, since you said yes. Right next to it, instruction, obedience, storm. Not instruction, wrong turn, storm. That sequence changes what the storm is allowed to mean about your obedience. This isn't a promise that every hard season means you heard God correctly. Discernment still matters. But you can't use "this got hard right after I obeyed" as automatic proof you got it wrong. That's the first thing almost nobody points out. The storm doesn't disprove the instruction. But there's a second detail in this same night that's harder to explain away. Bold claim. Jesus' sleep in that boat wasn't him ignoring the danger. It was evidence he wasn't afraid of it, sitting 3 feet from the disciples the entire time, before they ever panicked. Mark 4:38. Jesus is in the stern, asleep, on a cushion. Not braced. This is a boat that's taking on enough water that professional fishermen are convinced they're about to drown. And 3 feet away, the most important person in the boat is sleeping through it. That a person doesn't sleep soundly through something they're genuinely afraid might kill them. Fear keeps you awake. You know this from your own 2 a.m. ceiling staring. Jesus' sleep was an honest, physical, involuntary signal of exactly how much threat he perceived, not enough to lose sleep over. The disciples had access to that information before they ever woke him. They could have drawn a conclusion from it. Instead, they woke him and basically accused him of not caring, because a completely calm, sleeping Jesus wasn't loud enough to compete with the storm. This happens to you constantly. You're often sitting 3 feet from evidence that things are more survivable than they feel. A friend who's been through worse and is still standing. a verse you've read 100 times, a past version of you that made it to the other side, and the current noise is loud enough you don't turn and look. The evidence isn't absent. It's just quieter than the wind that it's worth noticing what the disciples do with that quiet evidence. 2. They don't ignore it forever. They eventually wake him. That's not weak faith. That's actually the right move, even if their tone was more accusation than request. The evidence was there before the asking, and it's usually there before yours is too. You just have to turn toward it instead of only toward the waves. Here's your practical move. Name something specific. What's my version of Jesus asleep on the cushion right now? Maybe it's that you're still able to pray, even badly, even angry. Maybe it's a specific person who walked through worse and is doing fine. Name it tonight. Don't wait to feel calm first. The disciples didn't either. That's the second thing almost nobody preaches. The most reassuring fact in the room isn't always a miracle you're waiting for. It's already there, quieter than your fear. Bold claim. And this is the one I want you screenshotting. Jesus didn't calm the storm with effort. He used the exact same authority he was about to use on the disciples' fear, and the storm obeyed faster than they did. They wake him. Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown? That's an accusation, not a request. Jesus stands up, speaks directly to the wind and the waves. 3 words. Peace, be still. Mark 4 verse 39 says the wind died down completely, and it was completely calm. Not gradually. Instantly. Let that speed sink in. A storm capable of 10-foot waves, gone in the time it takes to say 6 syllables. Compare that speed to how storms usually end in real life. Grief doesn't resolve in 6 syllables. A financial crisis doesn't clear in the time it takes to speak a sentence. This video isn't promising an instant fix to your actual circumstances. What it's showing you is that the source of peace itself isn't slow, even when the process of your specific situation is. Those 3 words weren't just for the sea. They're the same 3 words he's saying over whatever's currently storming in you. And they carry exactly as much authority over your situation as they did over that lake. Jesus doesn't say a longer sentence. He doesn't negotiate with the storm. 2 words of command, 1 word of description, spoken with the tone you'd use to correct a child, not the tone of someone straining against a threat that might overpower him. He's not fighting the storm. He's simply more authoritative than it is. Point 1 more detail. Jesus speaks to the wind and waves as if they can hear him and are expected to obey. The grammar you'd use commanding a person, not describing weather. That's a claim about who's actually in charge of the elements. And it's the same claim behind the 3 words spoken over whatever's raging in you. Here's your practical move. The simplest one in this video, on purpose. Next time the fear spikes, say these 3 words out loud, like a command, not a wish. Peace, be still. Not please calm down. Say it the way Jesus said it, like you actually expect it to listen, because the authority was never about your own voice's power. It's about whose words you're borrowing. Bold claim to close. The real miracle isn't the calm sea. It's the question Jesus asks right after, because it assumes they already had enough not to be terrified. Before anything changed, the wind is gone. The sea is flat. Instead of sea, I told you it'd be fine. Jesus asks, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? He's not asking why they were scared of 10-foot waves. That fear was reasonable. He's asking why his presence, 3 feet away all night, wasn't already enough before he calmed anything. That question doesn't have an expiration date. It's still being asked. The disciples had watched Jesus teach and heal with an authority nobody else had, and they still panicked the second the wind picked up, as if none of that had happened yet. Verse 41. They end the night more afraid than they started, not of the storm, of him. Who is this, that even the wind and waves obey him? The calm sea didn't produce comfortable faith. It produced, mixed with holy terror, that's worth sitting with, because it flips the usual order. We assume the miracle should produce comfort, and comfort should produce faith. This story shows the opposite. The miracle produced a bigger picture of who Jesus is, and that bigger picture was more unsettling before it became comforting. Growing faith doesn't always feel like relief on the way there. Here's your practical move, the one I want carrying you out of this video. Name specifically what you already have, not what you're waiting for. His presence in this exact situation. His track record, previous storms that didn't sink you. His character, unchanged since the last time he came through. Write those down tonight and rehearse them the next time fear spikes. Not as something you'll feel once the outcome changes, but as something already true before it does. That question was never meant to shame the disciples. It was meant to point out they had more than they were using. So do you.so here's where we started. Right when your life feels like it's falling apart, the calmest person in the room is usually the one you've stopped paying attention to. You just watched what that looks like. Obedience without a weather guarantee. A sleeping Jesus who was already evidence. 3 words with authority over your storm. And a question that was never about the wind. Why are you so afraid? When you already had enough not to be. Your action for this week. Name what's already true. The evidence you've been too loud to notice. And say the 3 words out loud, like a command, the next time fear spikes. Not someday. The next time it spikes. That's not a one-time fix, either. You'll probably need to say it more than once before this storm fully passes, the same way the disciples faced other storms on that same lake after this one. The authority behind the words doesn't wear out with repeat use. That if this reached something real in you, subscribe. This channel puts out a message like this every single day. Tell me in the comments. What's the one thing that's already true in your situation, the thing you've been too loud to notice? I read everyone. Peace, be still. Still true. Still now.